The question is, though, this will still take tens of billions of dollars of public money, and you have people who are screaming for more money for education, for the military, for military salaries, for 8 million different reasons. Why is space travel, space exploration so important to the public good that tens of billions of dollars spent on this is more valuable than tens of billions of dollars spent on education or health?
There will always be the arguments that we could, instead of spending this on space, which we don't need, we could spend it back here. The fact of the matter is that the military does need to upgrade the ability to secure our assets in space. The U.S. has more satellites, and we have become more dependent upon satellites for our security, our communication, worldwide security. Those assets need to be protected. We need to defend ourselves against missile attacks. A number of these things have been sort of set aside. We need to catch up. These are the kinds of launch vehicles that is needed for the national security of our country. The competitiveness of our delivery of the civilian rockets needs to be competitive with the increasing efficiencies of the French Ariane rockets. When the Challenger accident occurred, just before that, the U.S. launched about 90% of the Western world's payloads. After the Challenger accident, almost 3 years later, that had decreased down to about 60 or 50%. It's still down around it, but the French have a new rocket that is meeting its cost objectives, and we, on the contrast, have expendable rockets that may not quite meet their cost objectives. We need to have an active upgrading of the next generation system of rockets. Otherwise, we will not be competitive in the world. Now, the Chinese rockets are getting better and better, and of course the Russian rockets are very good, and they're based on a system that can reduce the cost down below what we could do. So we need to be competitive in that market. And I think we also deserve to the young people of our country to be leaders in the world of exploration and space. There's no reason why we can't have people return to the moon in 15 years about, and human explorers, not tourists, but explorers, going to Mars, but only if we as a nation make a commitment that when we go to Mars, we're going to go there and not just do it 2 or 3 times and then stop, but we're going to go to Mars and have a gradual buildup of a permanent presence of a settlement on Mars. Sooner or later, a responsible civilization owes it to future generations to ensure the survival of humanity here on Earth. And you can never tell when something might come from outer space that we can't react against to prevent from a catastrophe happening here on Earth that could conceivably wipe out the human race unless we have a growing settlement somewhere. Now, whether that should be done by 2025 or 2050 or 2100 or 2200 or just when it should be, I think it is a growing realization that things can happen in this universe of ours that we don't have any control over. Whether we know whether there's life somewhere else or not, we owe it to our civilization to ensure its survival.
So you really think the survival of humanity really depends on space exploration? Continued?
I think it eventually does, yes. Plus the opportunities for the resources that are in the asteroids to bring back to make up for the depletion of the use of resources here on the surface of the Earth. And I think breakthroughs in energy can make space travel much more cost-effective and efficient. But the most important thing is we need to increase the reliability of the rockets that we have. 1 in 20 failure for expendable rockets is not very good. We need to make that 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000. And the best way to do that is to bring that rocket engine back after it's flown and look at it and examine it and find out where the failures are about to happen. And that means reusability. And we must break through this reusability barrier. We must be able to afford to invest in that. If the payload that is going into orbit is not large enough, if we don't have a high enough volume, then it's difficult to build the business case for investing in the wings and wheels to bring the rocket. We might as well just throw them away if you look at it from that economic position. But if you have a vision for the future and you realize that in order to have an efficient system that's highly reliable, we have to have reusability. Then the one payload that gives us high volume traffic is people. And that's why I'm convinced that building a delivery system and a place to go to, a quarters in space, where people can go for about a week at a time, and a delivery system that can take not 10 people once a month, but 50, 60, 80 people every other day. That's a lot of people, but that is what ballpark is needed to be able to charge people initially less than $1 million and then closer and closer to $100,000. But still, that's very expensive. So 10 or 12 years ago, I realized we must do something else to broaden out the opportunities. And a lottery or a game show selection or some sponsorship, a method of selecting people other than how much money they have to invest in a ride into space. We need something of that nature. When the rides are few and far between, 2 or 3 a year, then we can have an entertainment type selection or a sponsorship and an extensive training. But when we're flying people quite frequently, then we need something that has a rapid selection. And I think that's where we need to move into something like a sweepstakes or a lottery to make it available to more than just those with great means.